So we've never taken this up, Sir Ambet, Sir Tony, Kong, and team in our past activities, Joyce, ano?
Yeah.
Pero we thought that insofar as the infodemic is concerned, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, kailangan natin tong pagtuunan ng pansin. And we'll not just be talking about history itself, but how journalists play an important role in really battling disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. Sabi nga ni Joyce sa title niya, Antidote ito para labanan natin yung misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And to those who are watching us in the via FB live streaming, you can participate, you can engage with the resource persons. Just key in your comments or questions. Our moderator will throw that during the open forum. And those in the meeting room, you can raise your hand as well. So ayon. And with the support of Seidel Foundation, which is one of our principal partners, institutional partners, nagpapasalamat kami sa kanila kasi itong generous support nila ay binibigyan ng PPI a lot of creativity, Joyce, to come up with a lot of activities, not only this year, but in 3 years namin and in the coming 3 years of partnership starting next year. So let's listen to the program coordinator of Seidel Foundation on behalf of its resident representative to the Philippines, Attorney Guts Heineke. Please welcome Caroline Lee.
Good afternoon, Ariel and Joyce, and to our lineup of esteemed guests for today's roundtable discussion, Defending the Truth, History, and Journalism as Antidotes to Disinformation. I am Caroline Lee, Program Coordinator of the Seidel Foundation, and speaking on behalf of our resident representative, Mr. Guts Heineke, who would have loved to join you. Now, the Seidel Foundation is a German non-government organization that has been active in development cooperation work in the Philippines for more than 40 years now, working with different local project partners, from the Department of Justice to the Philippine National Police to the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, and of course CSOs also, including the Pimentel Institute for Leadership and Governance and alternative law groups, amongst others. Now, of course, one of them is the Philippine Press Institute, and we are really glad to be working with the Philippine Press Institute in a number of activities, from scholastic program series to training activities, and of course, quite a number of information activities. And that is also the reason why we are really excited for this project cooperation with the Philippine Press Institute, because the media actually has the responsibility to inform the people, and an informed public is essential in any democracy. So I would like to wish you a very fruitful discussion, and warm greetings to everyone in the room, and as well as for those who are watching online. Thank you, and good
Thanks,
afternoon.
Carol. Thanks, Seidel Foundation. My name is Ariel C. Sabilin. I'm the Executive Director of the Philippine Press Institute. Joining me today, as I said, Joyce Pañares, moderator, and also Seminar Director of PPI, and the training team of the Philippine Press Institute. Just a quick reminder, if you guys want to participate in our other activities, just visit the pages of Facebook pages of the Philippine Press Institute and Seidel Foundation for posting or announcements on our monthly activities. Marami po sila. So, doon po namin lalagay yung lahat. So, the further ado, and dahil we have to start the ball rolling, please welcome Joyce Pañares. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Ariel. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Maraming salamat po for joining us today. As Ariel mentioned earlier, this is actually the first time we're tackling the issue on attacks on history and attacks on journalism na magkasama, ano? And we are really, siguro to contextualize lang a bit our discussion bago natin tawagin ng ating mga esteemed panelists, medyo heavy duty po yung mga panelists natin today. We have, of course, our public historian, Mr. Ambert Ocampo. We have Sir Tony Lavinia. He's the convener and I think president of the movement against disinformation. And we have two editors-in-chief joining us all the way from Mindanao. We have Kong Corrales, the editor-in-chief of Mindanao Gold Star Daily, as well as kung andito na sa Zoom room, hopefully si Mr. Pingping Deliverio, the editor-in-chief of the Sibugay Express. So tingnan lang natin ano ba yung estado ng, siguro simulan natin sa journalism, tapos i-extend natin kung bakit under attack din ang kasaysayan natin. Sabi ng Reporters Without Borders, every year, yung World Press Freedom Map daw gets darker. And alam naman natin that journalists really play an essential role to inform the public so that an informed public can hold their governments accountable. Diba yun yung tunguhin talaga natin. Pero yun nga according to Agnes Calamard, she's the Secretary General of Amnesty International, a free and independent information is at the heart of the global system itself. If we do not maintain the space for a free press, the world order of tomorrow will be biased, one-sided, and detrimental to all of us. So regardless if you are fighting for the truth or whether you are sharing misinformation or disinformation, that kind of system will not benefit anyone. It will be detrimental to all of us, trolls and non-trolls alike. And I never really thought that, the day would come. Kasi yung journalism under attack parang lagi yan. Diba? Tumataas lang yung degree ng attack sa atin. But I never thought the time would come that historians like Ambert Ocampo will also come under attack. Pero oh my God, it's so what a world we're living in right now, ano? So at this point, I'd like to first things first, tell our audience that at any point, if you have questions, just drop them sa ating chat box and we'll take them later sa Q&A. Pwede rin sa Facebook Live. And then I'd call our panelists in this order. We'll start with Mr. Ambert Ocampo and then Sir Tony Lavinia and then Kong Corrales and then Sir Pingping Deliverio. Sir Ambert, for your opening remarks, please. Hi, sir.
Okay. No, I mean, I just want to, sort of summarize, what it has been like to be in the eye of the storm for 2 weeks. No, it all starts because, as you know, Ivy Marcos is promoting a film that will be out in August called Made in Malacanang, and I think they just wanted to create buzz. No, so they got the artistas to say some things, and one thing that struck me was one of the actresses who said, history is like chismis. And so I mean, that was my mistake. It was clickbait, but I felt that it was a slur on the discipline, which is history, a slur on the work that is the important work that historians do. So I just posted a very simple clarification. All I said was you shouldn't confuse history and chismis, and that history always aims at truth, etc. So it was a very cool. I didn't even mention her by name, and then it just went viral. Which I guess is the nature of the beast, because it is it's show business. So they move faster than history or than hard news. So. It just went viral, and to my great surprise, I started getting trolled in the most vicious way for something that, I mean, the trolling was not commensurate to the comment that I made, and so we were going to let it go, and fortunately, Rappler looked into it, and as you know, Rappler has a Shark Tank. So what they did was they looked at all the negative trolling, and they found out that, at least within 3 days of this coming out, that it was being spread to 20 known troll sites that are partial to Marcos. So when I saw that was the only time that I realized that I'm used to people disagreeing with me or telling me I'm ugly or stupid online. Which is why even in the Inquirer they tell me don't read the comments kasi maiinis ka lang. I mean, 99% of the time people are just want to say something mean. So it doesn't really matter. But then when I saw that this was targeted, deliberate trolling, it made me think, di ba? What is the importance of historians? Or I mean, I don't really write political thing, although for the past few years I've been working on the diaries of Ferdinand Marcos. So I mean, the first trolls I encountered were when I quoted the passage from Marcos Senior's diary describing Bongbong as lazy and they're worried about his education, etc. So ay nako, there was a great deluge of angry comments. And in the beginning, I was nice, but that's why I keep saying Patola is my new nickname. No? So for those in my page, I didn't mind. So I would answer because you write on my page. And as long as you are not rude, that is fine. So I would just say something like, somebody said, Dilawan ka, why are you using this Marcos data to insult Bongbong Marcos? And then I would just simply say, I didn't make this up. This came from the handwritten diaries of Ferdinand Marcos. So to throw this back at you, I would say, are you saying that Ferdinand Marcos Sr. is a liar? Siyempre, maipit na sila doon. Number two, are you saying that you know Bongbong Marcos better than his father does? So, I mean, it was that way. I would play with them. I would never be disrespectful or rude. So it was nice going. And then the second time I was trolled was, there was trolling during the elections because of who I sided with. But when there was the news about the venue for the inaugural, so I just wrote a column saying that, just stating the facts that, the two other presidents who took their oaths of office in the legislative building, or rather three, all three did not finish their terms, and two of them died in office. So it's just fact, but the way that it is read, parang why do you wish ill of the president, etc. So it became colored. But the funniest part is this comment on history, which had nothing to do with Marcos or politics or anything. This is the one that really went viral. And that if there was some silver lining, it was that there was a great deal of support from fellow academics, from my own paper, from the Manila Times, where some columnists attack me on a regular basis, from ordinary people. So it showed me at least the important work that historians do in a public sphere. My only regret is that I wish that more academics, not just historians, more academics actually write for the press. But as you know, academics normally have a low view of popularization or a low view of journalism. So the past 30 years I've been writing, that's the standard thing. Beto Campo, bakit wala kang footnote, but wala kang framework, theoretical framework. But I said, I'm only writing 700 words, for ordinary people, 700 words that must entertain and must educate. So I was lucky, and I'd like to think that although there were journalists before me who were writing history, Nick Joaquin, Carmen Guerrero Napil, Emilio Aguilar Cruz, but history as I would write it became something important because the late Leti Magsanok thought it was important. So I started writing for the Globe. First, I wrote for the Daily Express, which is a Marcos paper, and they felt that history was safe because it was history. But I could comment on the present using the past. So, and I would write for other newspapers under different names. But when I moved to the Globe, I wrote in the lifestyle page. That's where they put history part of entertainment. And it was Leti Magsanok, after a year writing there or 2 years, she messaged and said, "Why don't you ask your editors to move you to the op-ed section?" And I said, "No, I'm very happy where I am." And then it was Letty who said, "Writing history is an important task." And she says, "How can people take you seriously if your column appears beside a picture of Dolphy?" Because I didn't see it in that way, And eventually, I don't know, maybe she talked to the editor. So they moved me to the op-ed page. And I said, "Ayoko dito, mga katabi ko si Renato Constantia, puro matanda, no? And they were dour." So I became, I guess, the entertainment in the op-ed page. And after that, parang nauso na that you should have a historian in a newspaper page. But in the beginning, it was really a strange column because opinion pages are really meant to discuss politics and current events. And then here you have somebody who's talking about the past, but rather commenting on the present using the past. So that was the way in which I entered. So I'm both an academic historian and a journalist at the same time. So I write not for learned scholarly journals because nobody reads that. No, ano readership nila? 3. Only the editor and 2 blind referees. But here you are talking to ordinary people, and I'd like to think that history is important because if you don't know it, then you will keep repeating it. And as I keep telling my students, you learn history so that the present will stop reading like the past. So now that this has happened, it has actually strengthened my resolve to keep doing the things that I'm doing. No, I mean, we were given options to sue because the most libelous is actually written by a lawyer, and anyone who reads it, it's textbook libel. It is malicious. It is insulting. It is meant to degrade me as a person and as a professional historian. But I decided that cyber laws have been weaponized against us journalists, and my case would have been wonderful because it's a time when you're actually using the law for what it was properly made of. But I felt that that would be a distraction, and rather I decided to keep my eye on the ball and keep doing the things that I'm doing, keep writing history for a major audience, and try to gain more traction in this way. My great fear, I'm sorry I'm talking too long, but my great fear, for example, is I'm realized now that they have to ruin my reputation because when Made in Malacanang comes out, I'm going to review it and show why this is part of historical distortion, because from the trailer alone, you can see, the people are at the gates of Malacanang, di ba? Tapos may sulo. Sabi ko, ano
Parang
yan?
interview with the vampire yat.
Hahabol kayo ng aswang, di ba? And but the thing is, look beyond the sulo. When the mob is at the gates of Malacanang, the next cut is Marcos wearing the Hawaii attire, the arrival in Hawaii attire, and then Marcos says, "Masama ba akong tao?" Di ba? So now I mean, of course, this is the family version of the story. They claim it is based on a primary source, an important primary source who they cannot name. So how can it be important if you cannot name your source and only one No historian uses only one source. So we know where this is heading. And the Marcoses will be painted as victims of the story rather than explaining the whole context of why the mob was there at the first place. But again, we should not comment on a film we have not seen yet, so I will wait and watch it and give it a proper review. But I think it is important because history aims for truth in the same way that journalism does. And in this age of information and disinformation, this is what we face. There is a concerted effort to smart shame. It is bad to have higher education. It is bad to have expertise. It is bad to even be truthful. So we are at the front line of the defense of truth in a time when truth is being diluted. And both as a journalist and a historian, I think we should continue the fight, no matter how difficult it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ambet. Matter of disclosure, estudyante po ako ni Sir Ambet Ocampo sa aking MA. Ang cognate ko ay klase niya sa Ateneo sa history. Bago ko tawagin si Sir Tony, actually, Sir Ambet, isa yun sa comment ko lang eh. Parang the way we teach history sa elementary and high school, I find it a bit problematic only because may pagkakabisote. You just keep on memorizing the names, the dates, the places, but not necessarily develop critical thinking to understand why such a thing or such an occurrence happened. Diba parang up until college, hindi ko masyadong bet yung history to be millennial about it. And then I decided, teka muna, nakakahiya. Journalism to you write history on the run, tapos hindi ko ini-embrace ang kasaysayan. That's why I took cognates. Puro history ang cognates ko nung MA. And true enough, pinahirapan kami ni Sir Ambet because he made us look for the primary sources. Parang journalism din talaga. Hanapin mo yung primary sources para maintindihan mo kung ano ang nangyari nung panahong yon. Balikan natin tong discussion ninyo, sir, no? I'd like to call, of course, an ally of Sir Ambet, an ally of truth tellers, Sir Tony Lavinia, columnist po naman yan sa Standard and President of MAD, the Movement Against Disinformation. Hi, Sir Tony, for your opening remarks lang po.
Sure. Hi, Joyce. Thank you for inviting me, of course, Ariel and others.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm bati muna kasi dinala ko yung klase ko dito. Professor Ambet, nagtuturo ako sa San Carlos Seminary. Actually, readings in Filipino history but using a philosophical lens. Yun yung lens na gamit namin. Di ba? Kaya yung history na may bias, parang basta may lens, di ba? At bakit ginagamit yung lens? Yun kasi halimbawa, syempre sa seminarians ito, they're preparing to be priests. So, sabi ko sa kanila, at the end of the road, syempre yung lens na gagamitin natin, yung Christianity, di ba? But it doesn't mean that we cannot be objective on what we see, di ba? That we cannot determine what the facts are. So actually, nandito sila, all my students are here.
Wow.
Yung first assignment nila, plagiarize ko from Professor Ambet, which is but acknowledge naman yung so hindi siya plagiarism talaga. Pinagawa ko yung assignment mo sa first day of class mo, Professor Ambet, which is very interesting kasi when were you born? Look at the newspapers on the day you were born. I required them to do both Filipino newspapers and American or international newspapers. Interesting kasi yun yung time na si ERAP kasi these kids are born 2000 to 2002, di ba? But the additional assignment ako which is trace what happened to those events to today, di ba? How are those events today on your birthday related to what happened this week, 20 years after? They're mostly in the early 20s or late teens, no? And we had just had a discussion on that. Sabi ko, exactos, and we go to listen to when I said na kasama ka dito, lahat sila nagpalakpakan sa idol ka din nila. We read many of your things sa initial na discussion. But I'm gonna go straight to to my point also here. Yung movement against disinformation, yung focus talaga namin is accountability and non-partisan. We do not have a political lens. No, I mean, we really decided to do that, and in that sense, we're also allies to journalism. I mean, as we know it. And for me, and to address the topic that we have, journalism is so important to correct disinformation, both disinformation in history and disinformation today. And I mean, I do write for Manila Standard. I write actually for Mindan News. I write with Rappler as well. And all that I can say is all my editors in all those papers, including the news editors. Joyce is actually my idol. Yan si Joyce. Matagal na. Kasi maganda yung news Maganda yung news ng Manila Standard. Talagang di ba, yung maganda yung news ng Mindan News, maganda yung news ng Rappler. They're really able to check us, di ba, on on our facts, di ba? And that's very important. Ang importante kasi iba sa traditional journalism, traditional is that may process, di ba? May editorial process, may in fact may complaint process, di ba? Alam din ito ni Ariel. Ariel, ako pa rin yung chairman ng
Kayo pa rin, sir. Hindi pa rin kayo napapalitan. Oo,
more than 10 years. Kasi wala kami complaints.
We need to meet already. Kasi nire-revive natin yung local press councils. Oo. Sige, sir. One of these days, papatawag.
Interesting, no? It's interesting kasi yung Philippine Press Council, yan yung ng major print media, di ba? Yun ang kanilang PPI members, yun ang kanilang right to reply process, di ba? Na kung merong magko-complain kasi hindi siya right to reply, pwede pumunta sa amin. And we can actually tell the newspaper, I mean, of course, moral lang siya, but sinusunod naman kami ng newspaper, di ba? Na you have to give space, di ba?
To publish the complaint.
We never cross editorial discretion kasi we have to understand our role. No? So, but it's interesting in the more than 10 years na I've chaired that, halos wala talaga kaming So the process actually works and it's a problem, di ba, with social media because walang process na ganon, di ba? Walang process for accountability. At least in journalism, a process for accountability, yung journalism also holds us accountable for disinformation. Example lang itong kay Professor Ambet, we've talked about him. Actually, we gave him his options, di ba? Hindi naman lahat, alam mo, isa sa mga options always, di ba, is lalo na kung ginawang personal ang attack sa'yo ng disinformation attack is always to go cyber libel. I think si Kong also has to deal with this sa kanyang red tagging, di ba? But we've also understand that many of us do not necessarily want to go that route, no? Kasi either it just escalates the problem, gives importance to the person who should not be given importance, di ba? Like ako in general talaga ako pag inatake ako not to repost yung attack, di ba? Kasi why will I give ang laki ng ng social media
giving audience to them.
Diba? I mean, a couple of 100,000 every day, di ba? On all the different platforms. So parang if I do that, I would be So how do you respond, di ba? That's a challenge. But there are many ways, no? So for example, if a lawyer attacks you, we can have that lawyer disbarred. You don't even have to be the one to complain about that. So we're looking at that for some cases already. I mean, I can't disclose muna until we actually get that to happen. No? I mean, as you know, si former Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy, who is also positioning herself, auditioning for talagang avalanche of cases. From all of nation, di ba? Yung talagang health workers, doctors, PRC, activists, teachers,
civil society, CSOs.
Civil society, I mean, and journalists, talagang on red tagging, namin talaga siya, di ba? I mean, pero talagang siya, I mean, kahapon red tag na naman niya ako. But I followed that, not to respond, di ba? Not to respond to her directly, but na-froze ko lahat yun. I mean, na totoo lang.
Document them, sir.
Yeah, pinatroll niya ako, di ba? So inano ko muna yung ginawa ko muna private yung trolling, yung na yon para ma-document. Tapos, I'm asking my staff, delete nyo lahat. After that, ibalik ko siya yung post, di ba? Why will I allow her to, di ba? To drive me away from But you have to be smart in doing these things. Na. So, yun naman ang ginagawa namin. But the real, anong tawag nito? Yung what we really need to do on this, di ba? Is the social media platforms. Di ba? In the same way, hindi ako natatakot na magkamali, even my newspaper, Standard or Inquirer, or di ba, magkamali in relation to me, di ba? Kasi I know, even within those platforms, di ba, and those, I have options, di ba? Which is for me always the better option from the point of view of freedom of speech, freedom of the press. That would be the option I would take, di ba? But we don't have that option kasi with social media platforms because they refuse to consider themselves publishers, di ba? So that's what we're thinking about. What's the legal theory to actually make them publishers, no? Without violating freedom of speech, kasi ayaw ko din mag-violate gusto ko din yung, di ba, yung yun ang challenge, na lalo because they're foreign, di ba? They're foreign owned platforms. For example, if we say they're publishers, they have to be 100% owned Filipino. So parang, do they have to be closed down now? I don't want to go to that kasi totoo na may freedom of speech issue yan eh. So but we're actively looking for a legal theory that will preserve freedom of speech but also hold them accountable for the posts that are put there. Anyway naman, nandun naman sa kanilang community policies yon.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that with, actually MAD is composed of 50 lawyers, some of the top corporate lawyers, a number of human rights lawyers like myself, but you have more corporate lawyers there that are angry about what's happening. And we also have several non-lawyers there, and we have around 20 plus organizations, both lawyers and non-lawyers groups that are working. I mean, we'll find a way out of this. I mean, we'll find a way to hold this accountable. Kasi I think yun pa rin ang best way to make people accountable if we actually get the platforms to, di ba, dapat yung kay Ambet, di ba, first hour pa lang pinost yung mga kalokohan na yon, tinake down na yon, di ba, hindi na pinayagan na mag-viral.
Yeah.
Ganong klaseng di ba? So, yung akin, di ba, first hour pa lang, imagine tinawag akong di naman chair ng Central Committee, but member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, di ba? It's just absurd, di ba?
Hindi ka ginawang card-bearing member.
And it's so absurd, di ba? It's really absurd. If you know me, di ba? I have been appointed by all our last 5 presidents to do things for them in some way or another, some very high level, some very technical lang, on climate change, on the peace process with the MILF, even with the peace process with the NDF. Diba? I teach in almost 20 law schools, 5 in Mindanao, 15 in Metro Manila. Diba? I write a lot. I have a website that number 1 says, diba, sa aking parang I have a personal statement there of what I stand for. Number 1 is non-violence, diba? Always peace, always dialogue. Diba? So it's just ridiculous, diba? Of course, si Claire Carlos, the National Security Advisor, commented, di ba, ni-red tag pa nila trying to fight red tagging herself. I mean, ni-red tag nila yung colleague ko na si Tony Levin. How absurd that is, di ba? But they do that. No, it's done. So that is what we have to do in the short term to really fix this. And journalists have a very important role for this to play, di ba? In a way, ang ano lang dito is you have to be more perfect than or less imperfect than you are. Alam ko naman na imperfect kayo kasi matagal na rin akong nagde-deal with the press and also na nako-cover, nako-quote, di ba? So alam ko din naman na may imperfection doon, but you also have to be less perfect in the days to come or the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Tony. Ang ganda nung opening remarks pa lang. Ang dami na, tapos yung chat group natin may sariling thread, may sariling discussion sa chat natin. Nakakatuwa. And actually, I just want to say na we really appreciate yung MAD. Kasi parang for lawyers to band together and help in the fight against disinformation, malaking bagay yun eh. Kasi you can take legal action, especially dun sa mga disinformation that really puts your lives in danger. Like red tagging, for example, napaka-importante. Ngayon, kung baka magtaka lang kayo, bakit may 2 tayong editors-in-chief from Mindanao, Kasi tingin namin Mindanao, biktima rin ng disinformation as a topic. Sa naratibo, minsan pa wala. Kung hindi man mali yung narrative, minsan absent sila sa narrative natin, Kaya ito yung pushback natin. So let's call Kong Corrales, the Editor-in-Chief of Mindanao Gold Star Daily. And yes, nabanggit ni Sir Tony, biktima po ng red tagging. Hello, Kong. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
I'm
Cole.
glad. Ay,
Afternoon.
may hapon sa tanan.
Ang hapon.
I'm glad reading the thread in our chat box. Parang timing yung yung opening ko na inassign ni Mami Joyce. As far back as 1905, cited na ang news or newspapers, to be exact, are the rough draft of history. Diba? 1905 pa yan. So, and that is also the reason why na I stuck with the print medium sa journalism. Kasi stringent yung print kasi I grew up, I grew up in this industry na just like historians, we have to corroborate our claims. Our facts should be corroborated, well vetted, no? Na hindi yung titingala na lang sa kisame, no? And alam naman natin, this may sound medyo snobbish, pero no reputable newspaper will ever publish unverified reports. Why? Because it is a printed medium. Yung mga meme cards na diyan, mga like broadcasted commentaries, yung sa TV, it all passes through. The shelf life of that article or that story or that claim is as long as when they record that thing over again, di ba? So sa daily news, be it radio or TV, and now digital platforms, it's fleeting. Pero mas kakabahan ka sa print kasi it is there for all to see. And that's why there is this, an old editor of mine taught me that bylines are not there para sumikat yung nagsulat ng report. Bylines are there for accountability. You have to be held to account to what you've written and what you've quoted people as saying. Kasi kung mali yun, problema tayo sa credibility mo. And credibility is the only commodity a print journalist has. Without that, then it's just one of the a dime a dozen paid hacks. No? And kaya I stuck to print din kasi ito yung ginagamit ng mga historians kagaya ni Professor Ocampo. For the benefit of those who are YouTube sleuth and TikTok researchers, we have this so-called microfilms in the libraries. Now, what these microfilms are micro photos of newspapers in the past. No? So yun ang kinakalkal ng mga taong katulad ni Professor Ambet, no? To corroborate a claim and if it really happened, no? So I think the journalism and history kasi they work hand in hand, no? The journalists write what happened today, and in the past it will become a parang a turning point of a movement somehow of a society. Makikita yun sa mga history. Ito masasite nila where in the history na naging but na nangyayari ito ngayon. Okay, so what I just see is now is the battlefield, if you may call it that, should be back to the schools. No, we should have media literacy because most of these people have been silenced. Maybe because they were afraid. Mga bobo itong estudyante noon na pinagtatawanan kung mali ang sagot sa teacher. And with the democratization of information in the blogosphere, in the internet, no, in the information superhighway, now they are emboldened to say just whatever they want to say, because wala sa kanila yung the discipline of verification and corroboration. So kailangan may turo yan balik doon sa mga eskwelahan, and I think it should start earlier. Hindi yung isang subject lang grade 5. Ako grade 5 ako, aralin panlipunan, di ba? In 1953, kayo nang sasagot, anong date? Yung sinabi ni Julie sa chat, no? Dates and wala yung Mami Joyce pala. No, wala yung whens and hence. I think there's a problem there din in teaching history. That's why it was, honestly, it's a really boring subject in grade school and in high school. Why? Because it's all dates and names, and there's no hence and there's no whens. There's no, the students cannot own the learning because they cannot apply it in modern structures, di ba? And so isa yon. Why I said nga balik sa really basics, kasi if you see these bashings kay Professor Ambuet ba, kay retaging ba kay Attorney Tony, you see actually there is a really low level of comprehension. Yung mga pagbabashing kay Ocampo. Now, clear naman yung mga articles niya. I mean, I like reading it because it's presenting history as, the funny side of it, and you have these people commenting on I don't know, really left off field. Siguro, let's remind ourselves na even though we are in the so-called information superhighway, it is still garbage in and garbage out. No? So wala namang talagang mangyayari if you yourself will not try to understand these things. So talo tayo dyan. We can always say na we can improve, or apply more stringent processes in the newsroom. But in the end, if your audience lacks comprehension, patay tayo dyan. Game over yan. And we have seen how this new admin is capitalizing on that. And we have seen this also in history, na yung mga tyrants will never allow their citizens to be critical thinkers, no? Who could connect the dots. They would maintain them to be bright enough to operate machines, bright enough to go to their offices and punch in their cards, but not bright enough or intelligent enough to actually question things surrounding them that is affecting them in a day-to-day basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kong.
Can I reply lang, Joy?
Yeah, of course, sir.
Salamat, Kong. But when you say that you found history in school boring,
sa elementary, sir, may qualifier,
sorry.
Elementary, high school daw.
Well, elementary, high school, wherever, if you think history is boring, A, you had a bad teacher.
Yes.
Or B, you did not have me. No, I mean, even as journalists, diba? I mean, history is a story. And history is about human nature. So how can it be boring? It must engage. And I have realized in the past 40 years of teaching and writing, I realized, kasi nung araw, before she died, the late Hilda Cordero Fernando and Carmen Guerrero Nakpin were telling me, alam mo, ang tagal mo na nagsusulat. Marami nang gumagaya, hindi nila makuha yung ginagawa mo. Sabi ko, well, one, they have no sense of humor, which is hard to develop, di ba? But more importantly, I realized when they told me that the secret of history is not in the data. It's not about the past. The secret of history is its relevance to the present. And so when I looked at it, I realized that when I'm writing about what, the 17th century. So what does that mean to you? But I'm using the past that is always hooked on something in the present. So maghahanap ako kung ano yung, that's why nagtataka yung mga tao, bigla, minsan magsusulat ka ng Miss Universe, minsan magsusulat ka tungkol kay sa Orinola ni Quirino. Kasi I try to find kung ano yung pinag-uusapan ngayon, and then you try to find resonances of it in the past so that the past and the present become relevant. And I'd like to think that, even journalism, who will read us, di ba? Pare-pareho naman sinusulat natin. The who, what, when, where, how is the same, but it is how it is presented. And how news is news, but it becomes more important if it becomes relevant to people. And so, as far as I'm concerned, either journalism or history, it's the same thing. It's being able to tell a story clearly, to have a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, to have a story that gives people insight, hope, inspiration, depression. It's meant to give all of those. So if the history and journalism are allied disciplines.
Of course.
They're very, very much related. So
correct.
In a sense, when you attack, and I saw that, the attack on me, nag-umpisa na yan. They started on journalists, di ba? And when you think about it, parang anyone can write on anything on the internet. Tayo kasi, we have editors, we have fact checkers. Bago ilabas yung copy mo, ang daming dadaanan yan. And so, we try our best to be accurate, to be truthful. Pero dun sa internet, kahit sinong gago na lang can say anything. But that is what is important today. Now, when I was reading the troll comments, one of the themes that comes up, because I was told by one of my editors, kahit masakit basahin mo, tignan mo mga hugot nila. And the hugot, when I was reading the trolling comments, were usually, ikaw lang ba ang authority? Ikaw lang ba ang tama?
Ikaw na lang magaling.
Bakit ka ba, ikaw na lang magaling. Di ba? So, when you think about it, bakit ganon? No? So that is the hugot. So parang it is a distrust or an erosion of confidence in higher education or just education, expertise, knowledge. Parang bakit, since when has knowledge or education or expertise, professionalism become a bad word? No, and you see that, and it starts. One of my students wrote a paper last week, and yun yung reflection niya. Sabi niya, it started as a joke. Na pag nagsasalita ng English, nosebleed, di ba? Or meron kang sinasabi, magaling na, ikaw na, di ba? Or ambisyosa ka. So parang since when has ambition become a bad word? Since when has speaking in an international language become bad? So anong nangyari is the internet and the trolls, they try to pull everyone down to the lowest common denominator. Gusto nila bobo na lahat, di ba? Because that way there will be no opposition. No? And then we were talking about Kong is right. The whole idea I wrote, I've been answering people on the thread. Our educational system is meant to instill fear and authority. That's why they will never teach critical thinking. Kasi pag critical thinking, nagiging subversive yung bata. No, do not ask questions. Ito yung libro, sundan mo ito, di ba? Akong teacher,
sa module namin, sir,
diba?
Sa fighting disinformation, na-identify talaga yon. Ang isa sa bias na lumalabas is authority bias.
Authority bias.
Being taught mula pa pagkabata.
Mula
Do
sa
not
pagkabata.
argue sa authority.
We never question those in authority, di ba?
Balikan natin ito, sir. Let's just give Ping Ping Deliverio the chance to give also his opening remarks. Ayan, para pag-start na tayo sa ating Q&A. Sir Pingping, ayong hapon po.
May hapon po diha, may hapon yung tanan diha. Okay, tulad nga sinabi ni Kong, no, kung ang orientation ko sa newspaper. So meaning sa newspaper talaga, sabi nga ng isang politiko dito na pag tinitira ka ng newspaper, masakit kaysa radio. Kasi ang newspaper, hindi mo mabubura yan eh. Nasa history na yan. Kaya I need to be accurate talaga sa facts ko. Kailangan talagang you have to validate, revalidate para accurate talaga ang facts mo. Pero ngayon, ang nangyayari ngayon, parang nawawala na, extinct na yung mga newspaper man. Kasi wala nang accuracy, lalo na sa social media, clickbait, pwede. Yan niyo, merong propaganda, wala na talaga. Lahat in fact, ang government units, information officers nila, nag-embellish ng mga facts nila, pero hindi na talaga, disinformation na talaga. Meron ako example, may press release yung governor dito. Sabi niya na wala nang mga communist terrorist ang probinsya. Pero kinaumagahan may nangyaring encounter. So meaning, pati mga government offices, na rin. Kaya yung mga nasa newspaper, parang unti-unti nang nawawala kasi overwhelmed na sa mga vloggers, mga dyan, clickbaits lang ginagawa, propaganda, lalo na sa social media. So, yun nga, sabi ko, ang feeling ko nga, nawawala ng newspaper ako. Unti-unti na rin akong pumasok sa social media. Meron na kaming brand sa social media. So yun, kailangan natin i-reorient yung mga bata natin na ang facts, ang information, lalo na sa social media, verified yan, accurate talaga. Hindi na yung lahat na So yun lang po. Joyce.
Thank you, sir. Siguro lang po natin, simulan na natin ang ating Q&A. Ang isa sa nagtanong po dito, balikan lang natin. Si Mara Manabat, kasi sinasabi niya, saan daw po ba mahanap ang standards for writing history and journalism? Kasi halimbawa, sinasabi natin, ilang sources ba ang kailangan? Diba? Sabi ni Sir Ambet kanina, kapag sa history and journalism, dapat never single source yan. Diba? So, gusto niyo ba sagutin yon, Sir Ambet, Sir Tony, Kong, or Pingping? Ano ba ang standards natin? Sa history, sir?
Well, whether it's one source or two source, you don't take it hook line. You validate the source, yes. Diba? Is it truthful? Is it accurate? No, and then you check it with other sources, which is why beef about made in Malacanang, because the press release is a new version, a non-Dilawan version of the last days of the Marcoses in Malacanang from one reliable source. Eh, sabi ko, sino yung one reliable source? Obviously, that's Jaime Marcos. Diba? But you cannot even name your one reliable source. So, I mean, history and journalism, you always validate, even if you only have one source. You don't. I mean, it's that critical. It's that critical faculty, and I think that is the most important part of any engaged citizenship. No, and it should be taught as early as. And I mean, I see that in my classrooms. No, I mean, when I teach, I want my students to challenge me, but I'm not an ordinary teacher. No, so most teachers are so scared to be challenged or to be questioned. But in my class, kasi I always tell them you ask anything, even if it's asking questions is sometimes more important than the answers. Because if you stop asking, then you stop learning, diba? The whole point, the whole idea. I mean, the Greek word for history, historia, does not mean history as we know it. It means knowledge from inquiry. You ask, no, you inquire, and that's why you learn. So even that, no, that whole idea lang of what history is, we don't know that, diba? That you have to ask, and the Greeks were that, diba? Para question and answer, this whole Socratic method. You learn by asking, and that's what journalists do, diba? you learn by poking around. And sometimes, yan ang disappointment ko when I read some of the young journalists na parang nawala na sa kanila yung how to develop a nose for a story. Yung susundan mo, kasi siguro mag-rely lang sila sa press release, di ba? Pero yung makulit ka na hahanapin mo to its end, that's what history does. That's what journalism should be about.
Sir, siguro dugtungan ko lang yung tanong very quickly. Ang kasaysayan po ba ay set in stone? Paano kung halimbawa may lumabas na ibang detalye that would give a different angle or a different detail dun sa una nating nakuha? Historical revisionism ba ang tawag doon? Paano kung kailangan nating i-edit what we knew from way back? And kailan natin dapat masabi na, oops, teka muna, this one is already validated. Huwag na nating ibaguhin pa or diba, huwag nating i-revise itong history na to.
Okay, number one, again, I have to repeat it over and over again, that in the Philippines, we like to use words without knowing what we are saying. One of them happens to be historical revisionism, which we mean the opposite.
Yes.
Because when you look at the word to revise means to correct, revise means to make true. So if you do the opposite, that's not revision, it's distortion. So we must call it by its proper name, diba? So that's one. And then second, kailan ba ito? I was thinking about it kasi ayun, si Clarita Carlos, Ranhilio Aquino, may mga comment. I mean, this whole philosophical comment na naman na there is no one history, there is no one to. I mean, that's true. You know, there are as many histories as there are historians. But the facts of history do not change very much. It is in the interpretation or the coloring of the story that changes. And I'll give you a very clear example, which I gave to my class just this morning. You open your Pag-asa. What time did the sun rise yesterday? Then you Google it. So let's say Pag-asa says the sun rose in the Philippines at 5:35 a.m. That is the fact. You cannot change that, diba? But you live in a condo where your bedroom faces the east. So you can actually see the sunrise at 5:30. But if you live in the opposite side of the building, which is the west, the sunrise is at 5:30. You don't see the sunrise. So your view of the same event is different, but it does not change the fact that the sun rose at 5:35. Yeah. Or if you live in the building, but there is a building that covers your line of sight, you do not see the sunrise, but it does not mean that the sunrise did not happen. Diba? So it became, what I'm saying here is when history is changing, I mean, you have new data, it will make things clearer, provide more detail, but the basic story does not change. You know, so what greater example? Let's say if you go to Japan, you know, the sites of the atomic and hydrogen bomb. I've only seen Nagasaki. I've never seen Hiroshima. When I went into that building, when you come out of the museum, parang maaawa ka, parang ay kawawa naman yung mga Hapon, di ba? Which is true. The bombs were dropped not on an armed enemy, they were dropped on civilians, non-combatants. When women, children, old people, all of them died, no? So when you go to these museums, kawawa, so you resolve, we will never have nuclear weapons ever again. And that's true. We have not used them since the Second World War. But when I came out, I said, why does Japan make itself the victim? Nowhere in that museum is any mention of what Japan did in Southeast Asia. That's why they dropped the bomb on you, diba? So, or even the whole counting, sige, so many people died. But the counter argument was, if we did not drop the bombs and the war continued, more people would have died. So I mean, it's the bomb falls. No, the fact is there, but how that is colored will change depending on who is telling the story. No? So whether it's journalism or history, you are trained to spot, diba, that bias. And is that bias going towards, and that's what I'm saying. History has a bias, true, but the bias is always for truth. History is never written to do untruth. So the bias is always to be correct, to be true, and I don't think that should even be
walang
a
argumento
consideration.
dyan, sir. Yeah.
Diba?
Sir, i-push ko lang sa kay Kong and kay Pingping, and then I'll ask one for Sir Tony. Kong and Pingping, sa mga journalists, alam naman natin na we write history on the run. Sometimes we write stories na hindi pa natin alam lahat ng detalye, lahat ng facts. But we have a deadline. The deadline is more sacred than our partners in life. So, we miss the deadline every day. Paano pag gano'n? Paano pag mag-erratum? Paano kapag sabihin nila, tingnan mo mali ka, nasa print ka pero mali yung sinulat mo today kasi the next day it was proven mali. O paano ang online? Sa online, napakadaling mag-edit. Babaguhin mo lang. Asan ang accountability naman doon sa parte natin? How do we resolve these issues?
Okay. That is the difference. That is pinoint out mo na, Mami Joyce, the difference, no? There is this, ito kasi, disinformation and misinformation. Now, tayo na nagbubuno daily ng balita, no? We don't have the luxury of time to really dig deep into it unless it is a special assignment, no? Kasi tatawagan ka na ng EIC niyan. Anyway, misinformation, hindi yan sinadya. It was the best and nearest truth we could gather during that news gathering time frame. Now, disinformation is sinadya yan eh. Sinadya yan. No?
Alam mo nang mali, pinablish mo pa.
Pinablish mo pa rin because you want to have something or you want to get at something. Now, balik mag-pedal back lang ako doon sa multi-sourcing, no? I have to be transparent. I did not graduate any Jorn School, Jorn College. In fact, I'm a college dropout. But I was trained by yung mga idols na ko na ngayon, mga editors, mga editor-in-chief ko noon, sila ni Caloy Conde, sila ni Froilan Gallardo. And whenever I submit a story which is single sourced, they would look at me funny. Because paano to mababalance? I mean, are you talking to somebody? Are you speaking for somebody? No, so the suspicion is already there. So kaya sinabihan ako, tinuruan ako na it has to be multi-sourced, you know. Merong mag-challenge doon sa isang claim and then it doesn't even matter kung gaano karami. Basta the crux of the claim is verified or corroborated.
Valid, yeah.
So when in times yung sinabi na back tayo doon sa kung magkamali ang journalist, meron tayong erratum.
Yes.
We admit our mistakes because di ba meron tayong parang proforma na nilagay natin na as of this posting or as of this writing.
As of press time.
As of press time. Yun kasi that is in defense na yes, read this. We have researched this. We have talked to people and this is the best we've gathered so far. So kung merong magbabakpedal na politiko na sinabon ng higher na politiko, so i-deny niya. So babalik tayo doon sa istorya. And then sabi nga ni Ares war on error na dayon. So anyway, the thing is, I would like to point out is, pinapalabas kasi ng mga trolls na know-it-all ang mga journalist. Kaya nga lumalabas yung mga comments na ikaw nang magaling. Ikaw na, ganon, di ba? Because that is how they project us journalists. Pero if they really know how much we put into our work, and how many times we commit mistakes and how many times we admit to those mistakes and correct them in a daily basis, hindi talaga nila ma-appreciate yan. Di lang nila alam na maraming mga reporters dyan na umiiyak kasi pinupunit ng editor yung mga single source na stories nila. Paano na yan? Yung in-interview nila are expecting na lalabas yung story kinabukasan. Yung the pressure dun sa writer, especially yung mga newbies, nadaanan ko yan. Kaya I understand yung in a way yung kasi nga parang medyo ang dating kasi mga journalist parang medyo maangas kung sa kanila. Parang ang dami namang alam ng tao nito. Yes, marami talaga kaming alam kasi we read every day and we keep abreast of what is happening because it is our job. No, so we can discuss anything from what is going on in Russia and how it will affect our economy, di ba? This pandemic, local uptick of dengue in a town, di ba? And you have to. We are trained to look into the micro and the macro of it. No? So, answering din doon pala sa yung paano kung kulang yung source, no? Hindi naman meron talaga mga ganun na merong mga sources na ayaw magsalita tapos meron kang hinahabol na deadline. Whatever I do this every time. I will make it up with context. Yung context, why are we here? Why are we discussing this? And why is this certain guy is talking about this? So yun, to upset the and look up past stories that have been published on the issue that is being discussed in the news article para to give it balance and body. Para hindi naman parang ang dating sa storya mo ay parang from out of a vacuum, parang ganun.
So for journalists, importante yun Kong, di ba? Pag hindi ka sinagot, ilagay mo sa storya. That also is your protection sa libel Para hindi sabihin na, ay ang tamad nito, hindi nito kinuha yung side ko. Paano naman kung I try to get your side, tas ayaw mo naman ako kausapin, tas the next day ngawa ka? Ay, kasi tama yun.
Yan ang ginagamit, actually, yung sinabi ni Attorney Tony about right of reply.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how this blip people capitalize on that. No? Merong breaking story. Kailangan mong kunan ng side si Mayor. Now the Mayor can always has the right to shut up, di ba? Bahala ka na storya mo dyan. Meron siyang bibigyan na medyo close niya na ibang journalist. Yun lang. They can cherry pick. Kasi meron din silang iniisip na bias to. So it's their point of view. Now, diyan papasok yung context. Kasi I will not allow, Mami Joyce, I will not allow anybody to hijack my story.
Yeah.
No? Because if they're going to use kung titirahan ako, meron naman akong right of reply. No, I gave you the right of reply. I'm giving you the right of reply now. So if you're not talking, then what's the sense in waiting for you? Diba?
Oo, tama.
Ayaw mo akong kasapin
Tama. Ano ang tingin ninyo dun sa discussion natin na yun?
Yung sa pag ano, yung particular na question, yung style ko dito, pag isa lang ang source mo, explain mo sa article mo na kailangan mo pang interviewin yung the other source.
Yeah.
But, explain mo yun talaga. Kasi, pero kailangan mo talagang gawin kahit sa next issue na. Ganun ba? Para hindi mo explain mo muna na siya lang ang na-interview mo, wala pa yung side sa kabila. Kasi para sa akin din, sa akin kasi, sa amin kasi, weekly yung news namin. Pag may issue, let's take for example yung kay Mayor. Kay Mayor issue, may nakapunta sa kanya. Paanohin ko kay si Mayor, pero next issue ka na Mayor, yung space mo. Para rin makatulong din sa newspaper. Pero interview kong dalawa. Interview ko yung dalawa, gano'n. Pero
Para sa susunod,
nagkamali ka, pag nagkamali ka talaga sa facts mo, yun na yung erratum. Yun na yung
Tapos
erratum.
ang erratum ngayon, mabilis na sir, kasi may online na eh.
Yeah.
Unlike before, susulat pa sa atin.
Pero kailangan lang talaga, ang pinaka-importante dyan, yung sinabi ni Sir Ambet, na may news to news ka. Ikaw talagang personal magpursige sa news. Kaysa maghihintay ka na ibibigay sa'yo. Okay.
Puntahan ko lang, salamat Sir Pingping, puntahan ko lang si Sir Tony. Sir Tony, maliban po kasi sa inyo, yung grupo ninyo talagang legal action, yung isa sa solutions, Pero parang sa mga journalist, dapat ba lagi namin i-consider yon? At kung hindi legal action, ano pa yung pwedeng gawin? Hindi lang ng journalism community, but even ordinary people to push back, to fight back. At meron ba tayong pwedeng, sorry sir, sunod-sunod, meron ba tayong pwedeng gawin to force naman the social media platforms para sila mismo kumilos against disinformation?
Actually, the answer to your first question, Joyce, is last recourse ang legal action. Always ako sa mga kliyente ko, sinasabi ko yun, wag kaagad mag-take nyo kasi magastos yun at matagal. Diba? And what might be an overnight thing will become a 10-year thing for you, a 10-year headache, heartache for you, diba? So actually, the answer is that, diba? You take legal action when there is no other option, and it's the best option that you have. I mean, given the circumstances. Ano yung mga in-betweens, diba? Ang mga in-betweens essentially is about negotiating things with those that have the power to have an influence in, diba, in the dissemination, in the continued presence of that disinformation. So, nabanggit ko na kanina yung sa social media companies. So, yung una namin ginawa, Joyce, in-engage namin sila. Diba? Nagsulat kami, context nun, election. So, sabi namin, urgent. Dalawa, election and human rights. Kasi yun ang dalawang pinaka-urgent na disinformation with real-life consequences, di ba? Sa human rights, pwede ka talagang mamatay.
Real-life consequences. That is euphemism for you can get killed.
Yes, for human rights. Sa election naman, your country can go to shit, di ba? I mean,
yes.
If the disinformation continues and is not, di ba? So, so the engagement there is about, making them comply as quickly as possible to their articulated policies, di ba? So yun yung isa. Then maraming administrative na pwedeng gawin na so lang kayo may gawa kami sa sa red tagging kasi government officials, maraming options. May civil service, may complaint to their superior like Secretary of the LG, local government, merong ombudsman, di ba? Kung
can
lawyer,
hold them accountable.
May Supreme Court. No? So that's hindi considered cases, di ba, na judicial cases, but they're less and we can do it that way. So I think yun yung natin kailangan natin gawin, the universe of options when there is disinformation needs to be enlarged. Halimbawa, even sa ito court case pero hindi siya direct against a person, pero yung yung habeas data,
Yes.
FOI, gawaran to,
FOI can also be used.
Disclosure of information, amparo, writ of amparo.
Yes.
So yun, we are doing that. Pero yun na nga, medyo nasa early stage pa tayo, di ba? Because unfortunately, we kind of got in too late also. Di ba? Dapat 2016 pa, nag-ano na tayo ng gusto nito, di ba?
We should have gotten our shit together earlier.
We should have gotten our act together already. Yun lang ang aking regret talaga dito na we didn't get our act together quickly. Now the problem is much, trolls have been, architects of trolls in particular has been empowered, di ba? But ang maganda kasi we have people naman that have really, studied this already. Jonathan Ong, for example, my good friend, Jonathan Ong sa University of Massachusetts is really is able to help us understand, di ba, na hindi ito, kalaban natin dito, hindi ito mga amateurs, di ba? Hindi ito yung mga trolls na kami sa movement against disinformation, strategic yung hanapin namin, di ba? Halimbawa, if we will take action for Sir Ambet, hanapin namin yung, di ba, something na may lesson learned for everyone. We're not gonna just hire fight every Juan and every Maria, di ba, that attack him that are probably irrelevant, di ba? So siyempre kay Sir Ambet, mahirap lang kasi mataas yung stature niya na we don't want to give importance to those that have attacked him. But yun, I think we have more options than we currently have, and we need to expand those options and try them out.
Okay, Sir.
Si Badoy, aside from ombudsman, nag-PRC kami eh.
Yeah, no.
Diba? We have dalawang complaints, health workers and doctors, peers niya. Diba? That she read.
Doktor pala siya?
Doktor siya.
Doktor ba yun?
Dermatologist.
What? Derma.
Derma pala.
Well, that's a very basic violation, di ba, of the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
Red tag a person. I mean, that's you put a person to harm, di ba? Ang number one rule sa Hippocratic Oath is that, di ba, never, di ba, do not do any harm, di ba? And so, ano yan?
Nakakatuwa talaga yun, Sir Tony, kasi parang we're now seeing a legal pushback. Dati kasi parang, tara, bardagulan na rin tayo sa platform. Kaya lang, lugi yung kabardagulan natin, well-oiled machinery. Hindi tulad natin, nagingit-ngit lang tayo sa computers natin,
Nagingit sa galit.
Oo, ang dami pa sana nating dapat na diskusyon. As in, grabe, ang haba. While we're discussing the Zoom, sa sariling chat natin, meron ding ongoing na thread. Siguro ito yung last question ko na lang for everyone. And then we will wrap up na, with where we are right now. Ano ba ang dapat nating gawin? Siguro self-criticism ito, hindi criticism sa ating trolls or sa hanay natin, paano natin dapat to i-improve para naman, kasi diba halimbawa sa journalism, we have to professionalize din. We have to be humble enough to admit na kailangan nating umayos din para hindi tayo nababanatan or at least mabawasan yung banat sa atin. So ano po ba yung dapat gawin natin sa ating hanay to be better at what we're doing and to, being better would be ultimately our protection too. Simulan natin with sinong gusto unang sumagot.
Meron lang akong comment from...
Last word
Oo nga, Sir Ambet, dapat ikaw yung last na sasagot.
Hindi, meron lang akong comment dun sa thread, and it's related because in the thread there was talk about yung mga millennial journalists na reporter na madaling masaktan, kawawa naman na AHR ka. But sabi ko, nasasaktan na sila, ganyan lang. Kung naabutan nila yung editors na matanda na pupunitin yung copy mo sa harap ng newsroom, may mura pa. Sabi ko, ano yan, di ba? But the point here is, and I saw this very late na, because we do not physically go to the editor's office anymore. And I keep telling young people na what you did not have is someone like, sitting in front of Leti Magsano who will go through your copy, babalik sa'yo puro pula. Tapos hindi lang yun, yung parang, what do you mean by, I'm going to change this word. What exactly do you mean? Do I change this word or do I keep it? Yung mga ganyan, parang ito ayusin mo para ganito, ito yung unahin mo, ito yung, wala. Eh ngayon, you send your copy through email, lalabas na lang yun, edited na. I doubt if they even study the structural change, the grammatical changes into their copy. So they missed out on real mentoring. No? And then I remember it was Lorna Tirol, parang merong isang ganyan millennial reporter na ayaw magpatalo dun sa editor, no? So parang ba't daw kinokorek ka?
Oh my God!
And then I remember, nakaupo ako, and then I remember, pinaringgan niya, tapos tinuro niya, that is Ambet Ocampo. I edit his copy and he does not complain. Parang, ano ka, di ba? Sabi ko pa ako yan, pinunit mo na lang sana and go home, di ba? But that was it. You will tell Lorna, makikipagtalo ka kay Lorna Tirol doon sa storya mo. And when I looked at it was so badly written, no? Pero feeling niya, Pulitzer Prize yung sinulat niya. So, but that's the thing, no? Iba yung training that they will get. And if they don't really have that real training with a real editor, no, who will go through your copy, kahit minumura ka, matututo ka pa rin doon di ba? Or I don't know, nung araw, di ba naalala mo sa newsroom, nakaganon lahat ng mga dyaryo, all the
kita mo kaagad kung naiskupan ka.
Kung naskupan ka. Tapos yung mga, lalo na sa Globe, naku, si Teddy Boy, ang hilig dyan, no? Talagang bibilungan. Tapos may mga comment na parang, shot in the left chest. So makikita mo ang comment. You have one chest and two breasts. Left or right is, ayan yung mga ganyan. Or yung mga, ano ba yan, yung the victim was naked from the waist down wearing red panties. Parang may mga, lagi yung police beat ang kawawa, di ba? But sabi ko, kahit pinahihiya ka doon, hindi mo na uulitin yung mali mo uli, di ba? But that was part of the training, di ba? You learn by being shamed. But I don't think our millennial colleagues are used to that kind of training.
Yung mentoring, sir, tama ka, nawala. Because hindi sila physically pumupunta sa desk.
Sa newsroom.
And you can't ask them naman na, basahin mo nga yung kopya mo. Yes, of course, you have your editors. Your last line of defense who so sobrang sakit na ng ulo because every day you mangle the English language. You try to really make your copy better in the hope na may mag-pirate sa'yo. Diba? Ganun na lang.
Pero ngayon na nga, they have grammar check, they have spelling check.
Yeah, automatic.
So parang tayo, titingin pa tayo ng diksyonaryo kung tama. Sila ngayon, ang dali-dali. Diba? So the tools are there. So hindi ko alam kung mapurol ba sila. Iba yung training nila. So yun na nga.
Garbage out nga.
Or I think the one of the reasons they're like that is they don't read as much as we used to read. Their attention span is short. And that's why, phrases, the turns of phrase, learning language, if you read a lot, your writing becomes better, sharper. Pero kung hindi ka nagbabasa, wala mangyayari sa'yo.
Yeah. Sabi ko nga sa sarili ko, you must read twice as much as you write.
Yes.
Yun, correct. Yan.
Read voraciously.
Oo. Yun daw final word mo
ko yun, voraciously.
Yeah.
Hindi, pero yung mga editors natin noon, I remember, my editors sila, Pocholo Romualdez, sila Neil Cruz, this is 80s, Abe Cruz, makikita mo sila, lagi akong pinapagalita, ang bagal mo magbasa. Tapos makikita mo sila kasi one pocketbook, yung while waiting for press time, yung kahit walang kwentang pocketbook, nakakatapos sila ng isa, dalawa, di ba? Hindi ko lang ngayon, I keep saying, kasi wala silang cellphone, walang Candy Crush, kaya but hindi na sila magbabasa. But di ba,
Walang
nung araw
distraction.
yun ang training nila eh. Nagbabasa talaga sila araw-araw, di ba? And I doubt if our millennial reporters read as much as they are supposed to read. Di ba?
Kaya
If you
mga,
get
ang
your,
mga
if
estudyante
your
ko sa
news is
college
only
ayaw
from,
magbasa.
di ba,
Born
from
yun.
Twitter, yung Twitter yan, sanay sila getting their news in very small chunks.
150
Has no
characters.
detail, TikTokers, wala iba. So I think the next is really how to train our successors as journalists to be. Of course, they see we're old-fashioned, diba? But what are the things from what we learned that we should pass on, diba? Accuracy, truth, being fair, no?
Balance.
Because we all have a bias, diba? Balance, diba? This, how do we teach this to the successor generation? Kasi let's face it,
Developing a nose for news.
developing a nose. So parang ang tamad nila magtingin
News
ng
for
balita, di ba? So is that something that should come naturally, or how do we train them to be like that? You know? So yun yung Anyway, nalihis tayo, but I just saw that in the trend kasi.
No, pero very important yun, sir. If we professionalize, if we do better, mababawasan yung mga pwedeng ibanat sa atin, di ba? At the very least, yun man lang. Hindi na tayo pwedeng akusahan ng mali-mali yung detalye or mali yung pagkakasulat sa storya na wala sa konteksto, etc. Kung si
yes.
sir,
Yung,
baka merong mga last
ang tingin
words?
ko dyan, wag naman yung last words. Ominous.
Oo, di ba?
Closing. Sige, closing na
Closing
lang.
remarks. Sige na nga.
Alam mo naman si
Ang
Paul.
arte. How do we reach out? No? I think the challenge now is tayo yung professionals, no? Profession natin to. Now, we have the tools, no? And alam na natin kung paano magbalita, no? Ang nakita ko lang na change dito at saka magiging challenge natin na mga young ones is to not really change, but to fit reporting, our brand of reporting, our professional brand of reporting in these various social media platforms. Kasi wala na eh. I mean, yung sinabi nga ng isa sa panelist, di ba, na TikTok, Twitter, pero it is not really parang delikado sa atin kasi alam naman natin, marunong na tayo magsulat ng short and concise. Di ba? And siguro I think it's i-maintain yung sinabi ni Prof. Ocampo, maintain the credibility, the balance, and the sabi palagi ni Malu mga sa akin nun, certitude, no? Certainty, and then accuracy. Pero it is presented in a different platform. It may be, and I think that would lead them to go to the long form of journalism. It's just a matter of hooking them in, parang ganon, hooking them in. Kasi kung if we stick to our guns na talagang the long form, you read this para mas makaintindi ka, wala na eh. Pupunta na naman tayo doon sa ikaw na magaling eh. Di ba? So, we speak their language, but if they listen close enough, it really isn't like their kind of reporting. It is the accuracy is still there, and links and sources, will be available. Mas madali yan ngayon nga eh. If you think of it, di ba? Kasi everything's online. And it's just a matter of accessing these things that this data, these articles, these past publications to support your claim or your story. And it can be just a link, a URL, diba? In a new platform. So yun lang. I mean, I think our challenge really is among trad media is how do we, kasi late na tayo pumasok eh, how do we make these platforms, these SOCMED platforms work for us? I mean, I always tell my newbie correspondents that when they say that there's this animal called the new journalism, no, there's no new journalism. These are just new platforms. It is still the same journalism with the same news values, diba? Yung oddity, yung proximity, yung relevance, diba? It is still the same. It is still the same news values. The presentation and the platforms are just different. It is still the written word. If you really go down to the crux of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Salamat,
Kong. Sir,
PPI.
maraming salamat, Kong. Sir Pingping, baka may gusto po kayong idagdag?
Kunti lang po. Actually, yung sinabi ko kanina na ang print media is diminishing, parang i-extinct na, going to endangered species na, kasi lahat na ang matake sa atin, ang matake sa mga journalists, doon galing sa social media eh. So doon na tayo papasok. Pero dalhin natin yung mga ethics natin, yung practice natin, yung professionalism natin, dalhin natin sa Yun lang. Pag by and by, it's a long struggle, pero ang truth, ang katotohanan kasi, hindi mawawala. Pero yung mga fake news, madali lang mawawala yan. Wala na yan. Pero doon dalhin natin. Na-late lang tayo kasi we are delved into the print media, tapos pumasok na yung social media. Andiyan na pala mga sinungaling. Andiyan na pala sila, naka-embedded sa media. Tayo, hindi tayo. Dalhin lang natin. Pasok tayo sa social media. Dalhin natin yung professionalism natin doon para natin yung natin mga fake news na yan. Yun lang.
Thank you, Sir Pingping. Parang sinasabi niya we should all learn to do TikTok. kailangan kumapal na mukha natin para mag-maximize din natin ang social media platform. Sir Tony?
Sure.
For your closing remarks?
I think even sa mga panahon na ito, sa bagong panahon na ito, I think editors have an even more important role, to be able to guide the reporters or their opinion writers for opinion editors. I actually noticed that my longtime editor in Manila Standard, si Professor Adele Chua, is actually here. So I just want to recognize how much I appreciated the work that we did together all over these years. But she was my student in Ateneo. But I've been thinking about this kasi, di ba, madali kasi sabihin, and actually, Professor Ambet, narinig ko, di ba, na magti-TikTok ka na, di ba? Yay! Pero magpahanap ka ng director, Professor Ambet, do it professionally kasi ako kasi nag-hesitate ako kasi ayaw kong, di ba, because I teach in so many schools, in so many places, I don't want to be made fun of, di ba, by So sabi ko palagi na kailangan professional din yung Now, but there's there's something I've noticed. Yung mga print natin, newspapers natin, natuto na kayo sa Facebook. Di ba? Your memes are really good. When you put your first page, I always look aside for the front page of Joyce and the front of Inquirer, di ba? It's really improving, di ba? Na visually good, and so I think you have to work on that even more and master even that more. Para your meme is as viral, di ba? As the really bad memes sometimes that are that are sometimes professionally produced by mga bad memes. So it's very important. But then you have to now think seriously about how to do that professionally. Yung sa other platforms, mas challenging siya. So kami sa MAD, medyo kuha na rin namin yung Meta, yung Facebook. And matter na lang enough time before we pin it down and get them to, I say, behave better, di ba? Regardless of their algorithm. So next namin Twitter and TikTok, di ba? Instagram, YouTube din actually, YouTube. Although parang nag-clean up yung YouTube before the election, during the election, so parang less na now. But grabe rin yung YouTube. Grabe ang impact ng YouTube to our elections, no? Lalo na na-amplify siya sa Facebook. Diba? So we need to really figure that out. How do you deliver your news in 30 seconds, diba? How do you deliver your lecture, diba? Or actually maganda yung ni Kong kanina, I like that phrase, long form journalism, diba? How do you get your listener, watcher, follower, diba? Kasi yung matawag dito sa social media, how do you get them to transfer, diba, to the long form? Because I like to read. I also like to consume information, both because it's useful, etc. I have a very interesting day. I start with my newspaper, so Manila Standard, Rappler, because those are the two papers that I have. I always do a full of what are the latest in Minda News kasi yun yung tatlo. Carol Argilis is a superb editor, diba? And then then of course I do Inquirer for the Philippines as well kasi habit na talaga siya. Noon pa when I was in the US, I always do And then sa hapon I moved to I moved to the Guardian sa UK, and as many European newspapers that are in English that I could find. And then I go to New York Times and Washington Post at night, di ba? It's really very important, interesting the innovations that are being but of course it requires budget, di ba? So we need a publisher, di ba, with deep pockets who's willing to invest, di ba, na yung short videos but leads to links, di ba? That gives you the long articles, di ba? Kasi sa akin din, if I have a critique of our newspapers, ang bitin ng stories, di ba? Alam ko na, di ba, si Joyce, as I said, because I read your, alam ko na original, yun, di ba? Yung hindi siya press release, kasi ang pinaka-hate ko yung press release, di ba? Doon na lang ako sa website ng government office kung press release na naman. So I like it when the reporter is telling you something more than, di ba, what was But talagang ang ikli na mga stories, di ba? Kasi siguro sa space requirements, yung mga ganyan na even sa opinion namin, sa dati si Adele allowed us 1,400 words. Kasi ngayon, naging 800.
Yes.
I try to push back 900. Kasi gusto ko mag-explain, di ba? But you need to figure that out, di ba? How can you use the short form to bring them to the long form, di ba? Or it's like books. If you want them to read books, ano yung tamang hook sa kanila, di ba? So yun, I think that's a challenge for all of us, and I hope we can really traverse that challenge. Because otherwise, matatalo talaga tayo by people who, di ba, who are not, people of bad will with resources, but they're limiting it to these resources to these bad things that can be produced. That is so bad for society.
Thank you, Sir Tony. Oo. Teka, parang may feedback. So, ayun, Sir Ambet, may gusto po ba kayong idagdag before we close our roundtable discussion today?
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting us. Parang kulang ang oras, no? But I'm a multitasker.
Full day discussion.
I actually look at the chat box and I've answered many of the questions there. But is that, no? So when people would say, bakit di ka mag-TikTok? My standard answer was, let's leave the dirty dancing to Harry Roque, di ba? But on second thought, naisip ko, kaya tayo nainis because, TikTok is neutral. It is a platform. So kung kaya nilang gamitin sa kagaguhan, then you can also use it for good purpose. So sabi ko, sige, let's do TikTok that explains things, or I can do history things, whether you watch it or not. We have put things out into that platform. Kasi pag hindi tayo naglagay doon, iniwanan na natin sila. No? That's what is reclaiming the platform, or at least giving people an alternative. Kasi I realized, I found out, for example, that the second most searched website after Google is YouTube, which is true. I mean, I want to learn how to make a gazpacho. How do I open my cell phone? Nasa YouTube lahat yan, di ba? But when you look at the YouTube, I typed out Philippine history and I was horrified that there was not one single reliable YouTube videos. Tapos pag titignan mo, ako nag-umpisa na ng YouTube pero medyo konti pa. Sabi ko, tingnan mo yung mga Talyano Gold, di ba? Rizal lived to 113. Makikita mo ang views niyan 500,000, di ba? Tapos ikaw hindi ka mo makakuha ng 20,000, hirap ka na. So that's that. But the bigger thing with social media is this, and I think it's something that we should guard against, or it should always be at the top of your mind. Because I do Facebook, I do Instagram, I look at my analytics, I try to study which of my posts gain traction. One of the things that we should guard against, and I think many of our news outlets are falling into it, is when you stop reporting news as news and you start running after likes, running after virality. Because virality is not the reason that we do journalism. Diba? We want to be read, but creating virality is creating noise. Diba? So as I keep telling people, you know, yung mga nanggugulo dyan, they use energy to generate heat. And tayo as journalists, we generate light, not heat. So in that way, if we keep our minds focused on why we became journalists in the first place, we should guard against that wanting to be viral, that wanting to have so many thousand likes, because it will cloud your judgment, your journalism judgment. So in a way, we should keep our eye on the ball and see these things as distractions. But it's knowing talaga where you want to go as a journalist, no, and as a historian. I think in my case, I'm very clear about that. So you guard against chasing or doing things to chase after virality and likes. That will come if we do a good story, if it is something that we do because it is the profession that we chose to do. And that is, again, without sounding preachy, it is actually to pursue truth in all its forms. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a very good way to end our discussion today. Maraming salamat po, Sir Ambet, Sir Tony, kay Kong, kay Pingping. Maraming salamat at sa lahat po ng sumama sa atin sa ating almost 2-hour discussion.
Yeah.
Nakahaba po, ano?
The longest RTD
yeah, one
ever.
of our longest. We ask also our participants to please fill up accomplish the survey form. Nasa chat box po. So we can send to you certificates of attendance kung ano man. And of course, it's also a feedback mechanism for us para alam namin how to do better, how to improve ourselves. Ang PPI, may I just say, we try to maximize all platforms available now. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter na rin, Ariel, ano?
Yeah.
We even are present on Spotify.
Malapit na tayo sa TikTok.
Oo. Naglalagahanap lang kami ng lakas talaga ng
lakas
loob.
ng loob at kapal
ng mukha. Para
malapit na kami ni Joyce.
Oo. Konti na lang. Darating tayo sa exciting part na yan. Because after all, may I just say to end this, storytelling is our strength. Our strength.
Yeah.
We should not relinquish that to people who peddle disinformation and false information and misinformation, So, but again, kung meron man tayong takeaway dito, regardless of platform, yung principles ng journalism, and even yung principles ng pagsulat ng kasaysayan remain the same. Maybe mag-iiba ang ating the way we present it, pero yung paghabol sa facts, paghabol sa katotohanan, parehas yan. And gusto ko talaga yung sinabi kanina din ni Sir Ambet, na yung facts, they do not change. Just because hindi ka naapektuhan ng fact na to, does not mean the fact did not happen. Sa interpretation lang siguro nagkakatalo. So, ayun po. Ariel, any
Ayun.
particular...
I think, Joyce, this deserves a part 2.
Part 2, oo
Sir
nga.
Tony, Sir Ambet. I was thinking of that. Pero this time is going to be a public forum kasi para hindi limited yung audience. Kasi ang public forums natin usually umabot tayo ng 500, 1,000. So bigger venue, not bigger venue, but bigger audience for more opportunity to listen to not only sa experts natin ngayon, siguro madadagdagan siya. Probably, baka whole afternoon na siya, Sir Ambet, next time. But full program on that particular public forum, si Sir Tony and other journalists as well. So stay tuned for that kasi sabi nga ni Joyce, huwag natin tantanan ang paglaban sa misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Tayo ay dapat magsama. Sabi namin, meron tayong mga natural allies, where journalists are de facto historians. Meron tayong mga allies, natural allies, academics, CSOs, the legal community, at marami pang iba. Tulong-tulong po tayo. And that's exactly what PPI has been doing during the pandemic, Joyce. Lahat ng forums namin, kasama po ng other sectors. Wala kaming pakaalam kung tinotroll kami or binabash kami. Basta public lahat siya. So dahil ang gusto yung parating, dapat makinabang lahat. Dapat marinig lang whether they like it or not. Whether magustuhan nila yung sinasabi ng mga experts or ng panelists ng mga jurors or hindi. Basta iniisip namin sa PPI, the public deserves no less than a substantial activities, Joyce, na ginagawa natin this year at gagawin natin in the years come. Maraming salamat po sa ating audience sa Zoom and those who are watching us live on Facebook. Thanks to Seidel Foundation, to our panelists, and cross your fingers, part 2, gagawin namin ni Joyce. Pag-uusapan namin ni Joyce. On that note, we thank everyone. Let's keep engaging and let's keep talking about matters that affect the society, not just our industry. Maraming salamat po and keep safe, everyone. Ayun.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
At our panel